This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 121 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we were joined by Steve Gelbs. Steve has been with the Mets for more than a decade now, taking over for Kevin Burkhardt as their full-time field reporter back in 2015. He's also the studio pre- and post-game show host for the Jets on SNY. So we talked about the Jets. We talked about the quarterback change going from Justin Fields to Tyrod Taylor. We also discussed Aaron Glenn's first season as head coach and his relationship with the media. But then, of course, we also talked plenty about the Mets with Steve as well. He told us about the pressure of replacing Kevin Burkhardt and the pressures of filling in for Gary Cohen, a role that he actually had no interest in doing at first. We discussed fitting in with Gary, Keith, and Ron and learning how to be himself on the broadcast. And Steve also talked about being around the Mets players and covering Juan Soto in his first season. And then we finished up by talking about the Mets offseason and what might happen with free agents Keith Hernandez, Pete Alonso, and Edwin Diaz. Steve was really great, gave us a lot of cool nuggets about working with what is the best booth in Major League Baseball. So please make sure you rate and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page and enjoy this week's episode of the Awful Announcing Podcast with guest Steve Gelbs. All right, you can see him on SNY during the baseball season as part of the Mets broadcast with Gary Cohen, Keith Hernandez, and Ron Darling. You can also see him during the NFL season hosting the Jets pre- and post-game show on SNY. He is Steve Gelbs. Steve, thanks so much for joining us on the Awful Announcing Podcast today, and we'll talk plenty about the Mets in your broadcasting career, but you are joining the day after the Jets announced, or at least it was reported that the Jets were making a quarterback change. So do you agree with the decision to bench Justin Fields for Tyrod Taylor heading into Week 12 against the Ravens?
Yeah, I think it's long overdue, to be honest with you. And we talked a lot about this on the last post-game show. Honestly, we've kind of been talking about it on and off throughout the season. Justin Fields, I give him credit for the way that he's carried himself and, the way that he has not made anything into a distraction. But in terms of his play on the field, he isn't it, and I think it's clear now after however many chances he's had and however many years in the league that he just can't process things the way that you have to be a starting NFL quarterback. And so, if I'm the Jets right now, I understand the argument that obviously they're not going anywhere and who cares. And Tyrod Taylor, it's not like he's going to be a world beater. But I think where the Jets are at right now, they're in an evaluation stage for next season. And you have to have a quarterback that can, at minimum, help you figure out what you have around and what the pieces look like and who should be a part of the future and who shouldn't. And with Justin Fields back there, it was just impossible to do that. So I think that they were probably planning to do this prior to the Cincinnati game anyway. And then Taylor got hurt and they went with Fields and they won the game and 2-game winning streak. And so you delayed it out. But at this point, they gave it a shot with Justin and it's not going to happen. So they had to make the move.
How do you think Aaron Glenn has handled the quarterback situation this season?
Publicly or privately?
Publicly.
Listen, privately. Yeah, like privately, I've actually been impressed with how together the team seems to be, and how much he's seemed to get buy-in from a group that was struggling so mightily to start the season. But publicly, for a guy that didn't want distractions and that preaches accountability, let's be honest, it hasn't been there publicly, and he's made issues of such small things that don't have to be issues. And, I don't know if there is any deep intent behind it or if he's just a guy that doesn't feel like he has to share anything with the media. And so he's just going to make a thing out of it. But just for his own sake, listen, we can all talk about what we want as media members, as fans, the transparency, and that's all well and good, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, what matters is results on the field. But I will say this, that if you're Aaron Glenn, you are not making anything easier for you, and you are not allowing people to give you the benefit of the doubt when we get past this season. So this year is what it is. We know he's not going to be a one and done. We know it's going to be a more long-term outlook for this team. But if in year 2 it looks similar, you are not creating a group of media members that is going to give you much of the benefit of the doubt. And I never understand that from a public perspective. If you're the coach, why you would want to do that, why you would want to create such tension and animosity when you don't have to. And that's he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to act this way. And I don't really know the reason why he's choosing to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's entering the press conferences like looking to be somewhat combative with the media, and it's not like it doesn't seem like he's enjoying it. Like it's not like he's just like having fun with it or something. And is that something that like can a head coach, like this is his first season, can a head coach do that with the media in New York for 5+ years?
If he's winning, but if he's not, then no. And again, that's kind of the major issue for me with it, is that you're doing this when the team's not winning, and the act will wear, if it hasn't already worn thin, the act will wear thin as you go into year 2 and year 3, if you are not winning. So you got to win. I mean, if he wins, he can do whatever he wants. If he turns the Jets around, he can do whatever he wants. He can say whatever he wants. But if he doesn't, it just creates this added layer. And again, for me, like, listen, I think the quarterback thing is just, it's kind of silly. Like there's no great competitive advantage to not announcing Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor. So that excuse and that element, it is what it is. But for me, the thing that really, I was like, what's happening here is when you come after Rich Cimini for just doing his job. Aaron Glenn knows, he's been around a long time. Cimini covered him. Like, you're not going to win that battle. And it just comes off a little petty for something that is not that important and is not something that you should be scolding, or like the reporter is there. That is his job. You may not like that it came out. You may want to go behind the scenes and scold whoever leaked it, but you can't get on Rich for it and then to ask the entire media, like, just ask Rich. Rich has all the answers. Like, come on, man. Like, why are we doing this?
Did you agree with the decision to move on from Aaron Rodgers? What was your
No, I did. I agree with the decision. I understood the point of view of wanting a fresh slate and wanting to, if you're Aaron Glenn, wanting to have it be strictly your team and your program and trying to build a base from the ground up. And I also think that Jets fans, in some respect, because I was one of these guys too, you wanted so badly for Aaron to work out, and it was so devastating when he went down in that first game, his first year. And so it was just like, come on, give us something good. That I think a lot of fans looked at the final numbers last year for Aaron and said, like, well, he was pretty good. He wasn't good last year. He was not. And he did not have chemistry with Garrett Wilson, and there was some friction there clearly. And for me, 100 times out of 100, I'm picking the young wide receiver over the 40-year-old quarterback that may play 1 year max. And I think you're seeing it in Pittsburgh now. Yeah. Like Aaron's not, he's not what he once was. And so that combined with the cap element of this, it would be so financially difficult for the Jets to have kept Aaron Rodgers. It would work so negatively against the cap for the next couple of years that it just, you couldn't keep him around if you were trying to build this thing from the ground up again. And so, again, I don't know what went on behind closed doors. I think you can take issue potentially with how it was handled. Certainly Aaron did. But overall, the decision to move on, I think it was a prudent one.
Yeah. And I, like you said, I think watching the way he is in Pittsburgh, like he could be a serviceable quarterback for a good team. But that's not what the Jets were going to be this year anyway. So to try to try to run it back with him, it didn't make much sense. And then now also seeing the way Aaron Glenn is handling the media and handling the quarterback situation, like that just seems like if Rodgers was here, it seems like that relationship would have blown up at some point. Go back to 2023. What was your reaction when Rodgers got hurt? Like 4 plays into Monday. Were you watching from SNY?
Yeah, I was watching from SNY. I think my reaction, it's somewhere online. You could probably find it because I did the cut-ins for the Mets game that day. I wasn't supposed to, but after Aaron went down, my producer with the Mets texted me and he's like, "Hey, can we have a little fun with this? Can you do a cut-in and just show your emotions as they are, like just be raw?" And I think I did the cut-in from the studio. It was like a Phillies highlight or a Braves highlight, and I was just like, "Yeah, something happened. You probably already talked about it, Gary. Like, what matters anymore? Nothing matters anymore." And that, honestly, that's how I felt. That's how we all felt. Like, it was just the excitement level for that year was as high as it's been in so long. I remember we went out to dinner before. So we did that day. It was a Monday night football game or a Sunday night football. It was whatever the primetime game was, Monday or Sunday night. And I think it was Monday night against.
Yeah, it was Monday night
against the Bills. And the way that it worked, because we had the Mets game on SNY, was we had to do the Jets pregame show at 5:00, I think, because the Mets coverage started at 6:30. And so we did the show a few hours before the game started. And then we went out to dinner, Bart, Willie, Connor, myself, our producers. And I remember sitting at dinner and I just said, as a lifelong diehard Jets fan, if this implodes, if it implodes this time, I don't think I can ever get up for another season again. And even the expect the worst Jets fan in me could not have, in my wildest nightmares, anticipated it going that way 4 plays in. And I remember getting home that night, got home at like 2:33 in the morning. And my son, he's 6 years old now, so he was probably 4 then. And he was so excited. I had gotten him so pumped up. Aaron Rodgers. And my wife just turns to me when I get into my room at like 3:30. She looks at me, she goes, "Just don't act like you for him. Like, don't break his heart when he comes in. Like, put a positive spin on it." And I remember he wakes me up like 2 hours later. He's like, Daddy, how did Aaron do?" And I was just like, "Buddy, he got hurt. But they won. They won the game."
Right.
Like, but I was like looking at my 4-year-old saying, "I'm lying to you. I'm lying to you right now. This is the worst. This is the worst."
Yeah, it was so strange because like they did win a really exciting game. Like they came back and beat the Bills first game of the season. And I mean, like I tried tricking myself into believing that maybe, Zach Wilson was going to finally put it all together and this team could still be a playoff team. But every time I would then just like have that flashback to Aaron Rodgers get hurt, like it was so devastating. And like you said, like as much like people were comparing it to when they got Brett Favre, but I just felt like Aaron took so much better care of his body and like he seemed like he had so much more left. So I was really convinced that there was going to be a 3-year run or so with Aaron.
Yeah, so was I. And I'll also say this, Brett wasn't like, I want to come to the Jets. And that was very late in the preseason. And,
yeah,
and he was replacing Pennington, who I adored. Pennington and Corbett were my 2 favorite Jets of all time. Yeah. And, he just never really seemed all in. And listen, he was great. I mean, he was great until he got hurt. But it just felt like, okay, Aaron chose the Jets. He believed in the young talent. He was reinvigorated by the change, and he was gonna do it. He was gonna do what Brady did for the Bucs. Like that was what I believed. I really did. And for it to have gone the way that it did, it's just still to this day, there'll be times where I'll just look back at the video of Aaron running in with the American flag and just imagine what could have been.
I'm almost desensitized to the Jets losing at this point, because it has been so long since they've been a good team. And because of that, I have such little faith in Darren Muji doing much, even with the first round picks that he just got. Do you have a sales pitch for, like, as to why Aaron Glenn and Muji are the right regime and can get it right for the Jets?
It's interesting because the first 7 games when they went 0-7, I was really down on the whole thing, on the whole outfit. Felt like they had stripped a lot of the talent out. The defense looked like it had no idea what it was doing, and honestly, like even the draft, the first couple of rounds looked really good, but beyond that, I wasn't sure. And I think if you're a Jets fan and you've been watching this team for the last decade and a half, it's very hard to buy in.
Yeah,
but I was talking with Connor Rodgers. Connor Rodgers lives near where I do, and occasionally we'll drive in and out together. And I was talking to him the other day after the Patriots loss, but it doesn't matter. I said, you can see signs. Like, you can see, even that Patriots game, if they had a competent quarterback under center, they could have won that game. You can see signs of something building. And I think the fact right now that their talent, especially on the defensive side, just isn't there at all. And they're still kind of battle. I mean, even that New England game, they gave up a lot of chunk plays and there were plenty of wide open receivers, but they gave up a touchdown the first 2 drives, and then they fought and they battled and they kept the team in the game. And I think they gave up 1 touchdown the rest of the way. I'm seeing signs there. I'm seeing signs offensively, if they do things the right way, where that offensive line now finally looks like it is going to be what good teams look like for the next 5-10 years. Your tackles look like generational talents, both of them. Membu looks incredible. If you have a quarterback that, again, not to pile on Fields, but that's not holding onto the football for 5 seconds every time he drops back, you're going to look even more impressive there. I am and have been a big advocate for not just transition tagging or franchise tagging Breece Hall, but finding a way to extend him. He's a part of the solution. I like what I've seen from Mason Taylor as he's been able to flash. You have Garrett Wilson. If you can go out and just add a wide receiver, it is the infrastructure that's developing offensively, I feel, where you could finally put a young quarterback in there at some point and allow him to have success. And then the thing with Muji, I was not high on him for a while, but the trades that he has made, and I'm not just talking about the Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner trades, which I thought he got great value.
For sure.
You're going to have to nail these picks, but he did really well with those guys and with those trades. But also, like the Harrison Phillips trade and the Brownlee trade, his trades have really so far been pretty good. And so for me, that's, if you want to hang on to something, it's that Muji seems to be savvy enough with these trades, and that Glenn, despite the public battles that he'll fight, seems to have the buy-in of the room, and the team seems to be slowly but surely becoming a more professional outfit, and becoming a team that doesn't just come out and lay down. And so that's what I'm choosing to hold on to. This year is what it is. I'm interested to see what they do the rest of the way. I'm interested to see if Justin Fields is even the QB2, or if they put Brady Cook there and then maybe give him some run at the end to just see what they have. But I think tentatively optimistic that they are headed in the right direction. And it's extremely tentative because you just can't. You can't. I've said this. I said it the day that Aaron Glenn got announced and Willie and I were on set. It's at the point now where until they do it, you have to assume they won't. But that's my sales pitch if you want to be optimistic.
You grew up a Jets fan. You also grew up a Yankees fan, correct?
I did. Yes, I did. Thank you for bringing that up.
It is kind of rare.
It's public. Yeah, it's out there.
And it's kind of rare in New York, like Gary Cohen, Howie Rose. Obviously, they grew up Mets fans. Ryan Ruocco, Michael Kay grew up Yankee fans. I think even John Sterling grew up a Yankees fan. Kevin Burkhardt was a Mets fan.
Mets
So like,
fan, yeah.
I feel like there just isn't much precedent for a Yankees fan working for the Mets or the other way around.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I actually remember when I got the job. So I was working at SNY for, I don't know, 2 months or something. And then KB got the job at Fox. And so they threw me in on a part-time basis. I did 55 games in 2014. And when I got the full-time job in 2015, I was quiet about it. You don't need to tell anybody how you grew up. And I remember Steve Serby wanted to do an article in the Post about me and do an interview with me. And I was talking to our PR guy at SNY, and I said, he's probably going to ask, did you grow up a Mets fan? Do you want me to lie? I mean, how do I handle this? And he's like, don't lie. Just be honest right off the bat. He said, the worst thing that could happen is you say, no, I grew up a Mets fan, and then a picture surfaces of you in a Yankee jersey or something like that. And so I did. And I remember at the time making a comment. It was true. It's like, yeah, I grew up a Yankees fan, but so did Matt Harvey. So, and the funny thing, and I do like, this is all, people will be like, oh yeah, right. But I'm serious about this, that when I was a kid growing up, so my dad his father was an immigrant from Poland, like knew nothing about baseball. And the way my dad chose his teams, he loved Joe Namath and he loved Mickey Mantle. Like that was the Mets and the Yankees. I mean, the Jets and the Yankees. But he had an uncle that was a big baseball fan. And he was I think he was either a Dodgers fan or a Giants fan, but he despised the Yankees. So the only team, even though my dad was a Yankees fan, the only games that he got to go to growing up as a kid were Mets games at Shea, because his uncle was the only one that would take him, and he refused to go to Yankees games. And so when I was growing up, my dad, it wasn't like we grew up, we're Yankees fans and we hate the Mets. We probably went to as many Mets games at Shea as we did Yankees games at Yankee Stadium, because what it would be is whoever was home that weekend, that's where we would go. And so, I don't even remember, I don't remember it even being as much, there being as much vitriol when I was younger until that World Series. And then, then it started happening. But
yeah, it was like the Clemens and Piazza, like that's
right.
when it really
that's when it really, yeah. But I was in high school then.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, like it wasn't this thing where it's like, oh man, how could I ever work for the Mets? Like I liked the Mets growing up. I was, I preferred the Yankees. I was a Yankees fan, but I liked the Mets growing up. And now, now I've been doing this for 12 years. I think it's going to be my 13th year around. So 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 13th year will be coming up, which is also wild. And, you'll hear this from people all the time, but when you're in it, when you're in this business, you start to really, you root for people, and I've now been a part of the Mets organization for 13 years. So it's kind of like that Yankee part was my childhood. And now I have no connection to I don't have that connection with the current Yankees. I have that connection with the Mets. And my son's an insane Mets fan. So it is what it is. And I've loved it. I've loved every second of it. I really have.
Yeah, no, you're invested in it much differently now as an adult than you were as a kid. But so the 2024 World Series, for example, Yankees Dodgers, were you invested in that as a fan at all?
Not really. I mean, it was, honestly, it was weird. I remember, so a guy in town, they were having this watch party for game one, and he's like, hey, why don't you come? A bunch of guys are getting together, and I came and I'm watching it, and I remember saying to him, I said, this is so weird. Like if you would have told me when I was, 11, 12, that one day the Yankees would be in the World Series, and I would just be like, if they win, great. If they lose, and I actually, you sit there and you're like, all right, I hope they win. But it wasn't this crazy investment. And then when Freddie Freeman, that was game one, he hit the grand slam, the walk-off grand slam, right?
Yeah.
And Freddie is maybe my favorite opposing player to deal with in the league. I love Freddie Freeman. Great guy. And we've had so many fantastic conversations over the years. And so when Freddie hit that home run, again, you root for people. I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's great for Freddie. So, yeah, it's very weird. And I remember, too, growing up as a kid thinking, like, oh, I'm never gonna be in the business and be just like rooting. You heard it from people all the time, like you just root for people. I was like, no way. But it's what happens. I mean, it's the same thing as like, it's the same thing as a player that grows up a diehard whatever fan. They get drafted by another team, and then you become a part of that team, and that's what it is. That is what it is. I grew up a huge Rangers fan. I remember thinking as a kid all the time, Mike Richter grew up a huge Flyers fan. How could he ever play for the Rangers? yeah, he does just fine,
Yeah. All right. Well, I was hoping we could get like the Mets broadcaster Steve Gelbs admits he's still a diehard Yankees fan headline, but we'll let that one slide.
Sorry to disappoint.
But being that you did grow up a Yankees fan, and I would imagine continued to watch mostly the Yankees throughout college and before you were working with the Mets, did you know how good of a booth Gary, Keith, and Ron were back in 2013 or whenever it was you said you were hired?
Yeah. I mean, that, listen, if you're going to go into this business, you pay attention to the greats, not just locally, but across the board. And so, of course, I knew what I was having the privilege of attempting to join.
Yeah.
What I didn't fully understand until I got in it was, it was a few things. How much it's like a ghost unit that you don't see behind the scenes that contributes to their greatness. Like, the four of us now, the three of them obviously, but the four of us are the ones that people pay attention to. But like our truck, like our producer, Greg Picker, he's the most creative guy that I've ever been around. And just the way that he pushes for 162 every single day to like try and do something different, try and do something entertaining or insightful. Like it just, you can never just sit there and show up at the ballpark. And the same holds true for the rest of the truck, the rest of the guys in the truck. But so that was the first thing. I did not realize like the 8-man unit that it really is. That's the 8-man unit is the traveling party, but everybody and the camera guys, everybody's great. The whole crew. The second thing that I didn't realize is how much they were going to push me silently to be great and to learn how to take it to the next level. And why I say silently is like you show up, and I'm sure this is how it is with like great dynasties. You show up and there is this unspoken expectation. And if you don't pull on your end of the rope, that's going to be really uncomfortable. And I remember early on, because I had no idea what I was doing. I was very green. The only sideline reporting that I had ever done was, some high school stuff when I had started first 4 years out of school doing MSG varsity. And it's just such a different beast. And so, I remember like I'd come to the ballpark and I'd be like, whoa, Gary Cohen's been here for 2 hours already. Gary Cohen shows up before every single game, like 4 or 5 hours. The amount of work that he does is remarkable. And same holds true. Keith and Ron in their own ways. It's like, if you don't bring something to the table that clearly has been worked on, that they're going to find interesting, that's going to contribute to the broadcast, I would do hits early on and they would be terrible. And it wouldn't be like yeah, that's really interesting, Steve. And like, it would be like, all right. And the 2-1, and it was one of these things where, hey, you got step up, like you got to step up. And they were very helpful whenever I asked any questions and they helped me get to that point. But I remember thinking early on, okay, I have to work just as hard, if not harder than them. And my entire goal on a daily basis has to be to somehow find something that Gary Cohen doesn't know. And that's almost impossible to do. And so with that in the back of my mind, it drove me. And I look back on those early years. They were really difficult. They were really hard to try and find my niche, my space in that broadcast, but I would not have changed a day because there is no way. Like, I thought I was a hard worker. I didn't know what hard work was until I was around those guys.
Was it a little deflating at times when they wouldn't
Oh,
engage
yeah.
just for the sake of engaging?
Oh, yeah. But you know what? And I've told this story before, and this is, again, and I have one of these with multiple ones, probably with all of these guys. But the one that the first one that sticks out to me and that changed my entire perspective is I think it was August, my first full year. So it was 2015. And I was just struggling. I was struggling with confidence. I didn't think I was doing a good job. And I wanted so badly to just take the baton from Kevin, which was an impossibility. Like, you have to develop your own voice, but you also have to be around. Like, you can't just step in and gain the trust and the contacts and the sources 2 weeks in. Like, you've got to be there on a daily basis for years. And so I didn't really give myself enough of a grace period to do that. And so, you're in your head and you're struggling and you're overthinking everything. And so I was in Tampa Bay, August, that first year, and it was just Keith and I on the bus, just the two of us, going to Tropicana Field. And, the thing about Keith is there's a reason he was the captain. Like, he views us as his teammates now, and he still treats us that way. And he was just, he was talking to me, and he's like, "Hey, you doing okay?" Like, I said, "Yeah." He goes, Don't worry about it, man. Like, you're a few months in, put your head down. You're doing better than you think you are. Keep working at it. And then we're talking about something else, and he says, "Hey, Tropicana Field reminds me a lot of the old Astrodome. And would you do me a favor? And after the game tonight, just when you're back in the hotel, do a bunch of research and just come up with a bunch of interesting facts about the old Astrodome for me to use on the broadcast tomorrow." And so I remember thinking, well, this is kind of weird that he's asking me to do his work for him. But yeah, I mean, it's Keith Hernandez. Whatever you need. And so I went back and I stayed up till 2:30 in the morning, finding out everything I could that would be relevant to a connection between the Astrodome and Tropicana Field. Show up at the ballpark the next day, go to bring him all these notes. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't have time to look at that right now. Just hang on to it. And, if we don't talk today, we'll talk tomorrow before the finale and I'll get it from you. But thanks for doing that." Okay. So now it's, I don't know, the fourth or fifth inning. And out of nowhere, I'm not expecting to be on. I'm not thinking about anything. And Keith just goes, "This Tropicana Field reminds me a lot of the old Astrodome." And actually, Steve and I were talking about this. And Steve, I know you had some really interesting insights into it. And it was just like, boom, you're open, you're on. You can't overthink it. You just have to know the material and have a conversation. And we went back and forth for a little bit, as I remember it anyway. It was 11 years ago. But we do this thing. And after the game, Keith just says, "That's how you have to do it. Like, stop thinking, stop being in your own head. Just talk to us. Just have a conversation. Casual." And that was, for me, the turning point. It didn't go straight up after that. It was, there's still ups and downs, but it was like okay, this is what I have to do. And this is how I have to treat it. And having a guy like Keith have your back like that, it also changes the dynamic. And again, they've all done that over the years. Gary's done, especially as I've gone into starting to do play-by-play. Gary's been amazing, supportive, helping me throughout that. And Ron similarly. Like, I remember Ron, one of the first play-by-play games I did, Pete Alonso, I think he tied the Citi Field home run record, or he broke the home run record, the Citi Field home run record. And I remember I'm making the call, and Ron takes his headset off, stands up and walks behind me. I don't know where he's going. And I'm a little panicked, like, wait a second, you're supposed to be analyzing this. And 5-10 seconds later, he comes back and he puts this note in front of me and he points to it. And it was a note about how much quicker he had done it than, I think it was Lucas Duda, who had the record before. And he just mouths, he's like, say that. And I learned that he had gone over to our stats guy, asked him the question, got the note, and gave it to me. He could have used it himself, but he wanted to make me sound better and be in that moment. So it is like, once I got over the hump with those guys, they have been amazing to me. And that's how we are as a group. That's how the whole group, it's about what's best for the broadcast. There's no ego involved. It's a really special work environment. I do not take it for granted. Not all environments are like this.
And I think to Kevin's credit, he built what is typically such a secondary role for a broadcast, and really made the position into being such a important part of the broadcast, and one that really resonated with the fans. At what point did you then kind of feel comfortable in that role, and comfortable kind of being able to be yourself, and knowing that this isn't just, maybe it would have been easier to do this with another team where it is a secondary part of the broadcast, but because it is such an important part of this broadcast, I'm sure that also put an extra pressure on yourself.
It put a lot of extra pressure on me, and it took me a long time, if I'm being honest, to be how I am now on the broadcast. I would say it took a good 5-6 years. It might not have really happened until COVID, to be honest with you, in 2020. I used to just I would put so much pressure on myself to do, to really dig in. To your point, our broadcast, they want the sideline reporter to be an investigative reporter. Like, they want there to be deep dives in ways that a lot of other broadcasts don't ask and don't give the opportunity to the sideline reporter to do. And it was a great challenge, but it's hard. It's very hard. And I would do that so much, and I would just I would be like a little dry. I wouldn't be myself. And I remember my producer at one point, it was probably like 2018, 2019 in the offseason, he called me up and he said, I was thinking, because I still don't think, after all these years, I think you do some good things, but I don't think we've made it the 4-man unit that I want it to be. And when you're not on air and you're just with us and you're out, you're really funny. You're self-deprecating. You're like I don't see that at all on the air. Just do that. Just be that way. And it was in my mind, it went into the back of my mind, but I still couldn't figure out how to do that. I was having a difficult time figuring out how to do that. And then COVID happened, and we were all separated, and it forced everybody to be extremely creative. And in my role specifically, very hard to do a sideline reporter, clubhouse reporter role when you can't be in the clubhouse. And so I was able to use a lot of the contacts that I had and phone numbers and this and that to call and text players throughout. But what I had to do was really start to think outside the box. And so I would just look for these little things that I could do. And the first one I really remember was, Gary for years, he would always make fun of my checked shirts. He hated them. He still does. He hates if I wear checked shirts. And so he said it on the air one day when I was in, Studio 42, and they were on site somewhere. And he does this whole thing back and forth about the checked shirts. And I don't know why it came to me then, but I was like, you know what? Especially because I'm not going to be with them. They won't see me beforehand. He said, I'm going to wear a tux tomorrow and get their reaction. And I called my producer, and he was like, I love it. I absolutely love it. And so we did it, and it was hilarious, and it was so much fun. And the once that kind of happened, the ball started rolling downhill. And I think once I opened myself up that way on the broadcast, then it became easier, not just because I was starting to figure out how to do it, but the guys felt more comfortable than doing those things with me. And so, I think sometimes it's a little frustrating because I'll feel like I do something really good, inside baseball, and nobody cares. And then I dress as a hot dog on Dollar Dog Night, and it goes everywhere. But the point is, I found this really nice, I try and, I don't know, in the course of 162, you don't want to force it, but I'd say I try and have 5 to 10 just really fun, outside of the box, just we're not solving world hunger here. Let's have fun with it. And that's kind of, so I think, I started full-time 2015. I would say I probably didn't find my full sea legs. This is how I am on this broadcast until 2020.
Is it hard over the course of 162 game season to try to find new information and stories for the broadcast every day? Like in the NFL, where games are once a week, obviously there's a lot of new information every single week. But for baseball, like, do you ever start a broadcast with the Mets and just feel like you don't have anything interesting to bring that day?
Yes, I do. It's a challenge, and it's especially difficult the longer that you've been in the role, to not repeat too often, to not bring back things. But what I have gotten comfortable doing, and again, it takes years of institutional knowledge and being around a lot, is I do not force anything. Occasionally maybe I'll think I'm not forcing it, and then I'll look back and say, that wasn't very interesting, or that wasn't very good. But on the rare occasion, like, there are times where I'll come in and I'll have only one thing that I find really good. It's very rare that I feel like I have absolutely nothing, like I'm going in completely blind. But on those days, you're just hyper aware of using your position there and observing. And I will focus extra hard on just trying to, like, okay, what can I bring that I don't have from a conversation, but I have from watching the dugout here? Or I listen intently to the broadcast. So sometimes I won't think I have anything, and then they'll say something and I'll be like, oh, I spoke to so-and-so about this 3 months ago. It wasn't enough for me to say, like, I'm just going to have a straight hit, but I can add to whatever they're talking about right now. Or there's a crazy play that happens at second base that they don't know what the rule is or why it was ruled that way. And I have contacts now in the commissioner's office, and I'll text and I'll say, hey, what's the ruling there? Why did that happen? And then I can add to that. So I usually find ways in if I don't have something that day. I've also found, though, and this just comes from experience, that you should always hold stuff back for those days where you don't have anything, or for a Sunday matinee where nobody's in the clubhouse before the game. When I first started, it would be a daily, okay, this is what I got today, and this is what I'm going to put on the broadcast. And then we're starting from scratch tomorrow, and we're starting from scratch the next day. That was painful. You can't do it that way. So I now try and have 2 to 3 evergreen things that are just in the back pocket, ready to go on a day where nothing seems to make sense or nothing really interesting comes about. And I also spend a lot of time in spring training. I sit with as many guys as I can in the dugout, no camera, nothing like that, getting to know them if they're new. But I spend, a half an hour, 40 minutes with each guy, just learning a lot of different things about them so that I can have that and drop them in throughout the season.
Do you get friendly and, like, develop relationships with the players over the course of the season?
Yeah, of course. I mean, some are more willing to do that than others, but especially in baseball, and especially if you're in the traveling party, we're on the plane with these guys, we're in the hotels with these guys. It's just hard. It's hard not to. You're around them every single day. You'll hear players talk about it, but it's true. We're around the broadcasters, our fellow broadcasters, and the players more than we're around our families. You're there every single day. And so, yeah, some people try and keep a distance and just be, hey, we're going to talk about baseball and that's it. But it's hard not to develop a relationship with these. And Brandon Nimmo and I both essentially came up at the same time. Like, we've both seen each other get married and have kids, and that, like, you talk about all that stuff. And honestly, one of the things, and I tell young reporters this all the time, kids that are in college that I speak to, one of the things that I've seen that I think is not good is you get this influx of people that they just kind of think that everything has to be transactional. And it's like, walk up, stick a microphone in the guy's face, and just, hey, what was this about? What was that about? What? And I often find that puts guys on edge. They put a wall up. Listen, I have a pretty good memory. Not everybody could do it the way I do it. Everybody does whatever works for them. But I have found that the best information that I've gotten, the most interesting information, is just sitting in the dugout during batting practice. The guy comes out, sit down next to him, talk, how's the family, how's this, how's that, start just talking generally about the game. Maybe you have a question about this, and you just kind of, it snowballs into something that's really interesting. And that to me, like if you're just genuinely curious about people and genuinely interested in them as people and their lives, a trust develops and more interesting information comes out. That's how I do it.
Being around the Mets last season, did Juan Soto look unhappy or like a player who missed the Yankees early on? I think the words that Michael Kay had used when he it was during the first Mets Yankees Subway Series, and he had said that he was hearing that Soto was very, very glum around the Mets clubhouse.
Yeah, it was hard to figure out early on what was going through Soto's mind. I think it was very obvious if you watched that whatever the reason, he didn't seem to be playing with as much joy. The Soto shuffle wasn't there. It wasn't necessarily like he jumped right in. But as the year went on, there is no doubt that he got significantly more comfortable with his surroundings, with what, again, like I would be completely speculating here to say he missed the Yankees or he could, who knows? I mean, again, these guys are human. Maybe something was going on at home and he was not himself from all I could tell. I didn't know him very well prior. And then as the year went on, you were like, okay, yeah, that was a different Soto. And now he's comfortable and he's happy. And so I think with Juan Soto, he is somebody that he doesn't just jump right into like, okay, I'm this gregarious guy and I'm going to take everybody in. And I think he's very guarded and he's very much a guy that likes to sit back and see and really like take in people and how they are and what they're truly like. And then once he does that, he's like, okay, I like that. I like the way this guy goes about his business. Maybe I'm not thrilled with this one. Maybe I'm going to, be closer to this coach or that. And that's just the way he is. And again, as the year went on, I found him to be great. If you ask him a question, he is very routine oriented. And so he'll be in the clubhouse, but if you're not there to get him in those 10 minutes or so that he makes himself available, then you're not going to get him. But when you do get him, he's very honest. He's very insightful. He answers your questions. He's clearly a baseball savant and genius. And but he's not going to be somebody that's just going to sit around and just hang out for like he is regimented. He's going to go. He wants to be the absolute best at everything he does. And there are going to be other guys that treat it very differently. But it is truly like any group in life where if you got 25 people in a room, 26 people in a room, different personalities. And so your job as a reporter is to figure out a way in with each and every type. And so again, to answer your initial question, the first couple of months, something was going on and something did not seem right's not the right word, but he seemed like there was something that was keeping him at an arm's length. But I'd say from June 1st on, he was right there. And I expect that that's going to be the way he is moving forward.
It's different because you're with the players every day and you're talking to them in the clubhouse. But do Gary, Keith, and Ron have relationships with the players? Because I know there was a thing a couple years ago when Todd Frazier had said that he approached Gary Cohen about being too critical. Like, yeah. do the players realize even how beloved Gary, Keith, and Ron are by the fans?
Yes, they do. And I mean, Carlos Mendoza, I think at his introductory press conference, even brought him up by name. He's like, I look forward to Gary, Keith, and Ron having conversations with them. Gary, the thing that I will give Gary Cohen, I mean, I can give him credit for a billion things, but he's very honest. That's one of the things that makes him fantastic. And I always give the Mets organization credit for allowing us to do an honest broadcast. He knows that part of the job of a broadcaster, of a reporter, is that if you are going to be critical, be honest, then you better show your face there the next day. And Gary Cohen, I have never once, not one time, seen him not show up for at least 5 minutes in clubhouse. He does a lot of prep work, so he's not going to be down there, nor should he, for a full hour. Like that's what I'm there for. But he is at every single open clubhouse for the last 5 to 10 minutes. And he stands in there just so that if anybody wants to approach him, they can. And if he has a question that he's curious about, he can go ask. And so I give him a ton of credit. And then I think when it comes to Keith and Ron, like, these guys know that they're beloved as broadcasters, but they also know that they're Mets legends. And so there's a respect factor there as well. So yeah, they get it. But you know, to Todd's point, like, if you're going to do what we do, if you're going to be as honest as we are, you're going to rub people the wrong way at times. But the key with that is that you're always there the next day. And I actually thought a lot about this with, you know, the tragic news this week of Larry Brooks's passing. And you would hear the outpouring of tributes from people that he covered. And that was one of the constant themes, that he could be critical, but he was there the next day. And those are the ones that players and coaches, even if they don't agree with you, those are the ones they respect. It's the ones that take the pot shots and then run away and aren't there. Those are the ones that bother them. So I think that's the dynamic at play with our broadcast and with the team. And I actually think that the relationship right now is as good as it's ever been. I think, you know, Mendoza and Stearns and Steve Cohen and, like, everybody, there's a lot of mutual respect and I think admiration there.
Did you feel more pressure the first time that you filled in for Kevin, or the first time you filled in for Gary Cohen doing play-by-play?
No doubt, Gary, because I had never done it before. You know, the Kevin stuff, I felt this pressure just because it was like, okay, you're stepping up to the big leagues, and I don't know if you're like, are you ready for this right now? And you know, and I knew how beloved Kevin was, but I had done it before. I had been a sideline reporter. Again, it was high school, but I had done it. I had been a host before. Like, all those things, that's what I had gone to school for, and I had tried to be. I had never done any play-by-play. I think I did one girls lacrosse high school game when I was at MSG varsity, because it was like a last minute. Nobody was there and they needed me to do it, and it was a disaster. But I had actually built up in my mind this wall of, your brain doesn't work this way. This is not, you can't do play-by-play, all because when I was a freshman in college, I went to make one tape and it was like my brain malfunctioned. I would see things and I couldn't say them. And I just, at that moment, and it's really out of character for me. And if I could go back and change one thing in my life, it would be that. But I gave up on it. I was like, you can't do this. You're going to focus on hosting and reporting, and that's your lane. And for years, when I was doing the Mets stuff, Gary and Howie and Kurt Gowdy Jr., who was our executive producer, and Steve Rabb, our president, they would always be like, you want to try it? Like, you should try it. You should try it, just a spring game. Like, try. And I would constantly say, no, that's not me. Like, that's not my thing. And Wayne was doing it, and he was great. And then Wayne left. Wayne Randazzo left to do the Angels, and they started to really turn up the pressure, because they said, this is ridiculous. Now you're on the broadcast. The fan base is well acquainted with you. Like, you can do this. Like, just go do it. And I remember I had a lunch, because I was so adamantly against it. And I had a lunch with our president, Steve Rabb, in spring training, where he wanted to hear exactly why I refused to do it. And he basically just looked at me and he said, if you want to know what I'm hearing there, you just sound like you're scared. Like, you're scared of taking a risk. You're scared of taking a chance. And I remember I just looked at him and I said, you're right. I think you're right. All right, I'll do it. And we made this deal where I would do one spring training game. And if I got through that okay and felt like I had been, you know, decent enough, or I could move forward and get better at it, that the next year I would do like 10 spring games, see how I did. And then if I did okay, I'd fill in for Gary during the regular season. And so I did the one game, and I had flown down for a day to do it. I get in my car. I'm driving back to the airport in West Palm, and I get a call from our producer. And he's like, "How'd you feel?" I said, "I mean, I got through it. I thought, I did it. It was scary, but he goes, yeah, you're Gary's backup this year." And I said, "You know what? I'm just not going to say no to these things anymore. All right, I'll do it." And so I did it, and I could not have been more nervous. Howie Rose, I still to this day I have it. Howie Rose about a half an hour before the first game I did in Cincinnati. We had gone he took me out to dinner the night before to just take my mind off of it. But he comes into the booth and he hands me Depends. He had signed it. And he was like, "Hey, just in case. And I still have it. But that's Howie. And so, I was terrible. I was terrible the first, and I'm slowly but surely getting it, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I'm doing it. And I think it's anybody that's listening, it's a lesson. Like, don't put walls, don't make walls up for yourself. Like, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think that it's, in a large part, it's having listened to thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of Gary Cohen in my ear over the last decade. But, you pick up the rhythm of it, and each game you get a little bit better. And Gary watches, like, what an amazing gift that Gary, on his time off, and he takes such little time off, he watches every single second of every out. And then he calls me up and he's like, "All right, you want some feedback?" And it's kind of like this ladder where he, there was one time I remember in spring training, called me up. He goes, here's my challenge for you tomorrow. Never use the word count. Try and go the entire game without using the word count, because I was getting into this pattern of like, all right, strike one, the count's 0-1. Ball one, the count's 1-1. And I would say that after every, and so I went the next day and I did that. And then I was like, okay, good. You got that. Much better. Now do this. Now do that. Now do this. And so, yeah, it's all long-winded, but I was much more nervous to do that. And now I'm like obsessed with the challenge of it. Now I'm like watching all these other games and I'm picking out, okay, this I like, this is more me. Like, Gary and I have a different style. So, okay, take this, but don't try and do Gary's broadcast totally. Do some things from here and some things from there. And it's been a really cool challenge at this stage of my career.
It is crazy because usually, like in this industry, as people are building on their careers, they just they scoop up every single opportunity that comes their way. So to hear that for years you were kind of like saying, no, I have no interest in like this incredible opportunity, and I think it was Gary Apple did it first after Kevin left, right?
Yes,
then
Gary did it first, then they went to Wayne, and then when Wayne left, they went to me. And you're right, that definitely makes me unique. Most people just say, yes. And I think our president was right. There was a fear for sure of you are going to buy, like, boom goes the dynamite level disaster, because the only reference point I had was literally seizing up as an 18-year-old, not being able to speak English. And so if that happened in New York, but the other element of it, and I mean this genuinely, is I was like, what hubris to expect that I could just step in and do something that people work decades and put thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of hours into crafting. Like, that's crazy. Like, you don't deserve that. And what turned me was not just our president speaking that way, but when I would bring that up to Gary and Howie, they're like, yeah, you have put in the time. Like, you've been on this broadcast every single game. You'll do these reports and you'll call the plays in the middle of it. Like, you have a a bond with the fan base that just do it. Like, just push yourself. Stop putting it on such a pedestal where, you have to go to the minors for 10 years in order to be worthy of giving it a shot. And so I did, and everybody has a different path and a different way to get into this. But yeah, I was definitely unique because you talk to 99% of broadcasters. You're right. And it's like, yeah, 100%. Like, I'll do it. I've never watched a hockey game in my life. Want me to do play-by-play for hockey? Sure. Yeah. Like that's how people think.
Yeah. And I think it's that bond that you have with the fans that really is helpful, because obviously you're not Gary, but when you're in the booth, it sounds familiar. So it's not just putting somebody new in there. So I think the fans just naturally kind of gravitate to that, the fact that it sounds and feels familiar. How are Ron and Keith when you're filling in? Because obviously you talk about the fact that early on when you were filling in for Kevin and replacing Kevin, like they were not necessarily engaging just for the sake of engaging. How are they now when you're filling in for Gary?
Awesome. The best. Our stage manager, who, if you're a regular watcher of our broadcast, him, Russ Relkin, because he always stands in the back and just, is stoic, and that's his character. But Russ and I actually go way. Russ was my producer when I was at MSG Varsity. And, so we talked through all these things, and my nerves before the first game, I remember him saying to me, these guys, they love you and they want you to succeed in this. So don't put so much pressure on yourself to carry this whole thing. Like, they want to help you. They want you to do this well. And so I try and lean on them as much as I can. And like I said, even that little thing from Ron, that little note that he dropped, but they are so great to me. They make it so easy. I mean, as easy as it is to learn. Like, I could not do that without them. Again, it's, they're like, I'm almost like their little brother at this point. They just protect me in so many ways. And I've gotten comfortable too, where when you're in it, if there's a moment you're not exactly sure where to go or what to say, if you just lay out for a second, they're going to pick you up. Like, they're just going to do it. So they've been amazing. They've been, as has, again, not to keep harping on, but this is just the thing people don't see. Like, their truck guys they're awesome. In my ear before the game, helping me with information, helping us with the elements. Like, they're just, you're so not on an island. And that's how I thought it would feel. I thought I would be out there by myself trying to tread water. And it's not. Like, they're lifting me. They're lifting me the whole time.
I got two more things I want to ask. The first is, how cool was getting to call Francisco Lindor that walk-off homer last season? And I'll say, like, I thought that was a really, really good call, especially because that was a game you weren't supposed to have, right? That was, you're filling in.
Yeah. Like, and that, you talk about growth and things that happen too. So that game, I didn't get the call until it's almost, I think it was afternoon. It was like 12:30 that I was going to do the game that day, because Gary had to put his dog down. And I just didn't have time to, again, going back to like overthinking, over prepping. I didn't have time to sit there and create this, this encyclopedia of notes on everybody. I had to just go and call the game and like be more conversational. And what I took away from it was that I over prepare. It's almost like when you're told you can have an open book test, you get that one sheet of paper and you've got the tiniest font and all, and you just can't find anything. It jams you up. And I'm constantly looking at my notes rather than looking at what's happening on the field. And so that was a really cool, like, okay, don't over prepare, and make sure that whatever you have is digestible. But then calling that walk-off home run, I'll tell you two funny things about that moment. I had only done, except the series where the one that I was telling you about, where Pete Alonso hit the home run, the Citi Field home run. I have only ever done road series. That one I did against Toronto because Gary was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame, but Gary doesn't take home games off. He only, he wants to get off the road a few series. So I'd only ever done road games. And it hit me in like the 7th or 8th inning that, wait a second, you have the possibility, you might have to call a walk-off. Like, that's different. That's, that's a totally different thing than I've ever done. And so it was in the back of my mind, because I remember Ron, you talk about these guys, how they help you. Ron has always said things to me like, anticipate with there being 2 outs, anticipate the 3rd out so that you can get to break cleaner and quicker. Because we have a very quick, it's like 3 seconds to break. Yeah. And so I remember thinking about that piece of information and thinking like, okay, anticipate that any at bat now could be any pitch could be the end of the game. And so once I took a deep breath and thought that way, that helped me anticipate the call. But then, since I had never done anything like that in my career, even the biggest, best moments that I've had, the interviewing Wilmer Flores after the walk-off home run and all the celebrations, the playoff clinchers, this and that, I'd never experienced anything like that. And if you go back and watch the video, even like I'm shaking and moving around, like my adrenaline was just coursing through my body. And Ron and Keith couldn't stop laughing because after the game, I spent about a half an hour just pacing in the food room. I couldn't stop walking. Like I was so charged up by it. And they found it hilarious because Gary and they've done a million of these, and we were just waiting for you wait for the crowd to get out. So we were just hanging out, and I couldn't stop moving. I couldn't stop walking. It was so much adrenaline. And I remember getting a text from Gary. He was like, fantastic job. And I texted him telling him, I can't stop moving, man. He goes, yeah, it's different. It's different, isn't it? To make a big call. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. And then the last thing, Keith Hernandez, Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, who is the most important free agent for the Mets to bring back this offseason?
Keith, obviously Keith, got to be Keith. But I'm not too worried about Keith coming back. I was out to dinner last night with a couple of Mets fans. We were going back and forth on this. It's very difficult to figure out who's more important between Pete and Edwin. I think I would lean Edwin just because I don't know where they go.
Yeah.
At the back end of that bullpen if they don't bring Edwin back. But similarly with Pete, that is a huge hole to fill. And I don't have a read on it, man. Honestly, I thought I had a pretty good read on it last year. I went out there and I got killed for this because nobody wanted to hear it. But I said, I kind of don't think he's going to be back. That was my feel last year. I thought he was going to get what he was seeking. I thought he was going to get a better deal elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how it developed. It's just the market never developed. The market never developed. And so the Mets brought him back and it worked out for both parties, and Pete had a monster year this year and doesn't have the qualifying offer attached to him. I think the market will be more robust this year, and I don't know what the Mets' willingness is going to be to go 4 or 5 years. But now Boras says he's willing to be a DH. Like if he's willing to be a full-time DH, maybe their appetite to go that extra year or two is greater. So I would put it at 50-50, but I have no read on this thing. I really don't. I don't know where it's going to go. The one thing I will say is that I know that a lot of Mets fans, with good reason, are very skeptical now of what's going to happen and of David Stearns and this team. I mean, you look at the temperature of the fan base a year ago on this day versus where they are now, it's polar opposites, 180 degrees. I will tell you that having been around this organization now this is, again, going on my 13th year, I am so ridiculously confident in the people they have at the top. And I think one of the great things about David Stearns and his group, Eduardo Brizuela, Carlos Mendoza too, I think they are very much a group of people that has a set of beliefs, but is very malleable when things change or don't work out. And I think that they are going to do things that are more creative than people are thinking right now, that are going to. So like when we talk about Edwin Diaz or Pete Alonso, it's very linear. It's like, all right, if you take Pete Alonso out, How do you replace that? How do you fill that first base void? I think you are going to see a restructuring of the team in a way that we can't really predict. Like even, Joel Sherman put out that little nugget in his article last week that an AL executive said they're at least spitballing. All right, what about maybe moving Brandon Nimmo? Like, what would that take? I think those are the things that people don't anticipate that could be out there that will restructure how they look. They want to get more athletic. They want to get, significantly better defensively. They need to improve their pitching. They know that. They know that they need a top of the rotation type pitcher in a way that last year they probably thought like, we're going to, it worked out well 2 years ago.
Yeah.
A little bit of a heat check. Like, let's see if we can do it again. So I think if you're a Mets fan, you should have confidence that the people that are running things are very smart, and they are not the type of executives that will just say, nope, we're 100% right. This is what we do. And like, we're just going to be stubborn and bang our heads against the wall because that's how we believe. I think they are very, very capable of transitioning. And I think they're going to do some things that people can't anticipate right now. I really do.
Steve, you were great. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it, man.
Of course. That is Steve Gelbs. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.